I think that's also the misconception of burnout is that we burn out because we work too much. And while that might be true for a very small amount of people, burnout doesn't necessarily come from the hours that we spend working. It comes from our inability to replenish our energy, from our inability to disconnect. So even if you rest, I don't know if you recognize this, but when I started my first business, at first I was taking a shower and listening to a podcast, a business podcast in the background, right? Or going for a walk and listening to an audiobook about business. I was sitting at lunch with my partner and silently brainstorming content ideas for Instagram, or with my family at dinner and I would just answer a quick email. So I would say it's not the amount of time you spend working, but it's how busy are you mentally.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast, your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, Eileen here, just really briefly before we drop in. If you happen to be listening to this episode before April 8th, you still have time to join us for the next round of Unleash Your Inner Witch. This 12-week journey deep into a different way of moving in the world, one that is more connected, more tuned in to your own intuition, your body's wisdom, the seasonal wisdom, and of course, the connection with other women who are also seeking a different way outside of the hustle, the grind, and the expectations that have been put upon us by society. If you're curious to join, please head over to myluminouslife.ca/unleash-your-inner-witch. The link, of course, will be in the show notes below. And if you happen to be listening to this before March 31st and you're feeling the call, the code coming home 200 will get you $200 off the tuition. If you have questions, anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, Eileen at myluminouslife.ca, or head on over to Instagram at IamEileenMarch and send me a note there. I'd love to hear from you. All right, now for the episode. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am here today with a very special guest. Diana is a nervous system coach who guides burnt out and overwhelmed entrepreneurs back to balance so that business doesn't become just another cage, much like the one they tried to escape when quitting their 9-to-5. They learn how to become deliciously rested while also building the wealth and impact they so deeply desire. Diana and I have had the great fun of conversing before on Instagram, and our work overlaps so beautifully. I'm really excited about our conversation today. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I am always so interested to speak to people about nervous system, rest, hustle culture, burnout. Like there's so much we're going to get into today. But as listeners will know, I always begin with a question about your own spiritual journey and whether spirituality has been something in your life from early days, whether it's something you've discovered recently, whether it's shifted in your adult life, whatever that story looks like, and how it informs the work that you do today.
Thank you for that question. So, spirituality, actually, I make a big distinction between religion and spirituality. I grew up in a
Hmm.
very, well, in Romania. I'm from Romania, by the way. I live now in the Netherlands. In Romania, we are raised as Orthodox, so Christian.
Hmm.
And I had
Hmm.
very early on, I had a big resistance to Christianity, let's say it like that. But since I was a little girl, I always felt a deeper connection with the world around me, with nature. So I I think even then I felt a deep connection with spirituality, but Christianity did not resonate. So later in life, I started to explore that a little bit more. And I think I was 20 something years old, struggling with life, not knowing what I was doing, like we all are.
As so many of us are at 20. Yeah.
Exactly. And I found spirituality in a different form. Back then, I gotten more into Tantra. That was my
Mm.
door to spirituality. And looking back, I really believe that many of those principles that are taught resonate deeply within me. And at the time, I also found that those spaces were sometimes a little bit predatory. In the
Mm-hmm.
tantric spaces, there's a lot of work with sexual energy, and that can get messy very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a necessarily like a cold story with that, but something inside me asked me to step away from these spaces because it did not resonate. I found a lot of unintegrated trauma, a lot of leaky sexual energy in those spaces. And at some point, I took a lot of lessons with me, but I also felt the desire to step away from those spaces because it didn't feel
Mhm.
like my next growth within myself and spirituality. And to be quite honest, ever since it's been now like 3 years, I believe, I have not been in spiritual spaces anymore. I took a sort of like a sabbatical from
Mm.
that, but I feel more spiritual than ever because I really believe that doing the work that I do and having done the work that I've done on myself and my own burnout journey was, in a way, the deepest spiritual journey that I could ever be on.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's so true. It's beautiful to be in spiritual spaces, but we don't need to be connected to our spirituality. My own connection came through
Mm.
nature and the rhythms and cycles of the natural world and connecting more deeply to the magic there and the more than human world. And the spiritual community piece came secondary and is something that I'm actively holding space for and cultivating in my offerings and programs. And yeah, I think you speak to something that many people will have experienced if they've gone into spaces like Tantra. They can be incredible and liberating and beautiful. And it's so important that anyone in those spaces has
Mm.
clean sexual energy, has done their work. And so often that's not the case. And so I'm sure that your experience is not unique to you, and I'm so glad that you are able to recognize and step away for yourself and take your own path towards what you're doing now. I also noticed halfway through when you were speaking that you have a clitoris on the shelf behind you, and I love that.
Yes, yes.
For the people who aren't watching, it's like a big pink and purple stuffed clitoris, and I'm in love. It's great. I have, this is a total aside, but I have same colors actually, a pink and purple. I wonder, yeah, it's right here. It's a stuffed like vagina, like, and
Ah,
it used,
I love
it's
that.
a Christmas tree ornament,
Beautiful.
and it used to have a little piercing. It's gone. The clip was there. It fell out because my cat has decided it is her favorite toy ever.
I mean,
So
I can
no,
imagine.
where's your vagina?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also a reflection of my past work because I did work a lot with women around their sexual energy. I started there in
Yeah,
Tantra, but then I moved towards doing this work with the nervous system and trauma integration. And so I think the journey is all
yeah.
interconnected, and I deeply honor my time in that world, one of my core values is integrity and cleanliness, and sort of like a sharp edge of cutting through what is not true. I always seek a lot of depth and truth. And as much as
Mhm.
none of us will ever know the universal truth, but it's still important to trust your truth in that moment. So for me, stepping away was the right step.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that you made that shift. I'd love for you to share a little bit with listeners about how do you make the shift from working with women in their sexuality as a coach, because that happened after stepping, or maybe at the same time, but also like you carried that work on past when you left that tantric space. But then you had to step back from that work as well, and that led to this shift into your new line of work. And so I'd love for you to share a bit about that story and what brought that shift on for you.
Mm. So indeed, it was. I was still working with women on sexuality topics after I stepped away from the tantric world. There were a couple of things that led me to the switch in direction in my business and my focus. One of them was my own journey with burnout, which I will tap into a little later. But the
Mhm.
other one was that I was seeing a lot of women coming into my container with a desire to feel more connected with their sexual energy, but also to be more sexually active with their partners. And I used to have a lot of tools for them, but there was still something missing, in my opinion. And as time was going on, I felt that, okay, women are extremely burnt out. So why are they accepting their
Mhm.
body? They're transforming their sexuality in another performance act where they have to give sex to their partners in order to not be abandoned, in order to be loved. So it's again another transaction. And to me, it no longer felt in integrity to market to women, you're going to have this amazing sex life, when actually the real issue is we are living in a society that prizes overextending ourselves, overgiving. We are extremely
Mhm.
tired, burned out, disconnected from our bodies. And I believe that work has to happen first. And all of the other
Mhm.
things, whether that is sexuality, whether that is spirituality, which was for me the case, can emerge from a space of I I'm doing the deconditioning work.
Mhm.
And from that space of knowing my inherent worth, no matter how productive I am, no matter what I'm doing for other people, from that space I can relate with others sexually. So yeah,
Right.
and of course I used to do that work with women in my containers. It's just the marketing piece no longer felt in alignment.
Right. Yeah. And that makes so much sense, listening to you speak about it. How can we have the sexual energy and emotional energy to have that really rich, fulfilling sex life if we are so burnt out?
Mm.
Even if we take that transactional piece out of it, which is very much there and so entangled in how we're brought up as women to believe that we need to please our men and put their pleasure and happiness and all of that above our own. um, you can have all the tools in the world, and yet if you're depleted, that sexual life force energy is life force energy, and you're not going to be able to connect with those parts of you in a fulfilling, sustainable way if you're depleted. I think there's some real beautiful truth there that you recognized in that work. And I want to talk about how burnout is showing up for us and also affecting entrepreneurs specifically. It affects everyone, but I think there's this kind of myth or this idea for many entrepreneurs that if they can just leave their 9 to 5, which is what's draining them, then they'll be able to recover. And what happens for so many of us, I have experienced this, you have experienced this, is that we leave the 9 to 5, but we don't leave the masculine hustle, that kind of toxic hustle culture patriarchy, all of the things that we've learned to believe about ourselves and our worth and our productivity, just because we've stepped out of a corporate space or a 9 to 5 space doesn't mean that we've left those ideas and beliefs behind. And so often we end up right back in that cycle of burnout, only now we like add on the layer of blaming ourselves for it.
Yes, yes. This I think this is a huge piece, and there's so many layers to it. But what comes to mind now is also, again, I believe what we see on social media. There's coaches left and right. So I feel like there's two different groups of people. One is the bro marketers, right? Like push through, hustle
Mm-hmm.
culture, do this, do that, cold DM, right? Like I don't know how many of us get the cold DMs. You see the sales coming from a mile. And then you have the other
Yeah.
part, which is the feminine business, right? Like I'm going to lay on the beach, sipping cocktails, and there's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be thousands coming into my PayPal notification. I'm gonna get them on repeat. And I believe both are
Mm-hmm.
equally damaging, especially for us online entrepreneurs, because we get bombarded from all sides with marketing advice, unwanted or wanted. And yeah, I mean, for me, I was more into the feminine business wave, let's call it that way. And I thought, okay, so if my energy is what's gonna attract me the money, the impact that I desire, then there must be something wrong with me because I'm not seeing that in my
Yeah.
reality. So there's a lot of self blame
Mm-hmm.
there. Of, I'm not good enough, right? It rubs over the wounds of our
Mm-hmm.
childhood of not good enoughness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then there's also the fact that it is impossible that we have. I don't know. I started my business when I was 24. And I have spent my entire life leading up to that moment believing all the hustle culture, right? Like my value was tied to productivity, to how much money I make, to how useful I am to others. We cannot expect that to go away overnight. We are
Mm-hmm.
still going to operate from the same systems.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think that the worst thing is that we can blame our boss when we're employed in our 9 to 5. My manager is an asshole. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm burning out. And there can be truth in that, right? Like there can definitely be truth in that, that some spaces are more abusive than others, more toxic than others.
Yeah.
And what is also true is that, again, I will sound cliche, it all starts here in the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so deep that most of us don't even recognize that it's there unless we have started to do some of that really conscious work of examining our beliefs and our thought patterns and our behaviors and the stories that we've told ourselves, been told that we carry. They're so deep inside that even when we do start to do the work, and I've often said, I teach what I need because even when we're consciously beginning to unravel that and say, oh, okay, I can see that pattern. Oh my gosh, I do not believe my worth is based on my productivity, but my body still believes it
Yeah.
is. And that's where the really like what your work is working somatically, right, with that nervous system to teach the nervous system, your body, that it is not worthy based on its productivity.
Yes. And I think that's also the misconception of burnout is that we burn out because we work too much. And while that might be true for a very small amount of people, burnout doesn't necessarily come from the hours that we spend working. It comes from our
Mm-hmm.
inability to replenish our energy, from our
Mm-hmm.
inability to disconnect. So even if you rest, I don't know if you recognize this, but when I started my first business, at first I was taking a shower and listening to a podcast, a business podcast in the background, right? Or going for a walk and listening to an audiobook about business. I was sitting at lunch with my partner and silently brainstorming content ideas for Instagram, or with my family at dinner and
Mhm.
I would just answer a quick email. So I would say it's not the amount of time you spend working, but it's how busy are you mentally. And then when
Mhm.
it comes to the business side, again, I think business entrepreneurship is such a huge shadow work. It's like, for me, it has been so much because it triggers all the wounding from my childhood. And the amount of time I used to spend in emotional distress due to the fact that I believed that I was just not good enough. I did not deserve success. I was not capable of creating
Mhm.
success. I was never knowledgeable enough, even though I invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in my own education. I never felt qualified enough. So it was those belief systems that were so deeply ingrained, making it so difficult because I was always in this emotional distress, not trusting myself, always looking, where am I going to fail? Where is the failure coming going to come from this time? Right? So this is what burn us out, not the amount of time that we spend
Mhm.
working.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, it's so applicable well beyond entrepreneurship. It's, entrepreneurship is its own unique beast, and because there's no external to blame, I've been known to say I feel uniquely broken when I'm doing all the things they say to do and it's not working. But the what you're speaking about, that busy mind, that constant consuming. And so even if you're not an entrepreneur, maybe you're in the shower listening to a personal development podcast, or you're like learning something. We're constantly stimulating ourselves, inputting, seeking this, like, even our rest becomes busy.
Yeah.
And so then we don't have those spacious times. I often think about, human culture, and I love thinking about, what did we do before we had screens? Before we had electricity, we had candles, we had books, we had oral
Mm.
storytelling, we had handcrafts where we'd sit and we'd knit and we'd share stories, or we'd be in silence and meditative, and practicing bringing a little bit more of those moments of stillness, consciously saying, I'm going to fold this laundry without a
Mm.
podcast or music on in the background. I'm going to go for a walk without my phone.
Yeah.
And if I see something really pretty, I'm just going to have to remember it with my brain instead of with my camera. And, those are such important things to start to do for ourselves, I think.
Yeah. I think that's, if we talk about burnout and recovering from burnout, I think that's where we start, right? The small moments. I think a lot of people believe that the burnout recovery journey is, I don't know, spending hours and hours a day doing meditation, doing journaling, whatnot. But when we are there in that position, it's our window is so small, right? And let me see, I'm going to grab something because I love to show this.
Hmm.
I love to model the nervous system with this. When we are relaxed in our curiosity, it's called, in somatic, we call it the ventral vagal space. So we are here, we are expanded, we are in curiosity. Well, what happens is when we start to experience chronic stress, and when I say chronic, is long periods of time going through that cycle of expansion and contraction, and we're spending more time here in contraction, fight and flight. It's our
Hmm.
sympathetic nervous system. We spend a lot of time here. So, what happens after a long period of this, our system collapses. And this is
Mm.
it's a dorsal vagal state of our nervous system. When we are here, and what is also the case with burnout. It almost feels like the brakes and the accelerators are on at the same time because we feel extremely overwhelmed very easily, but at the same time, we're extremely disconnected, shut down, numb, shameful. What I see a lot of people doing, they go to breath work or they go to deep meditations. So when we are here and we make a big opening, what is going to happen? It's too much because our window of tolerance got so narrow that a too
Mm.
much of an opening will bring us right back in the shutdown even worse. So I love what you
Mm.
said, and I wanted to explain this because it makes so much sense. Intuitively, we all know what we need. It's the small openings. It's going to on a walk and using our senses to see the nature around us, noticing the colors, smelling a flower, smelling the rain, feeling the cool air on our
Mhm.
face. It's really in the small opening. And that over time will just allow our system to expand very slowly so that we don't do this, but we keep expanding. And then we are in a state of natural contraction and expansion.
That visual is so beautiful. It makes me think like another way for those people who aren't able to watch what you were modeling there. Like if you think about a muscle that's been shortened, that's really short because you haven't stretched it in so long, right? It's like seized up and tight. Well, if you like, I'm thinking about my hamstrings because they're real tight. If I try to touch my toes and force it, I could literally tear that muscle and then it's really going to be like immobilized. I'm going to collapse right back. Whereas if I want to increase the range of motion of that muscle, I have to start by just stretching into, okay, that's where I feel the stretch and I'm going to breathe there and then I'm going to back off. And then the next time I get to go just a little bit further and I'm going to breathe there and I'm going to back off. And over days and weeks and months, you can get to the point where that muscle has that range of motion again. And it's very much the way our nervous systems work too. So, yeah, that I love. I've always see those balls and I've always been like, what are these for? Like they're fun. That's a perfect use for
I
them.
believe it's a toy, but I love to demonstrate the
Yeah.
nervous system with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about a little bit about hmm I think so many of us as women, and my listeners are primarily women. I think there are very few men here listening to us, but if you're here, hello, you're very welcome. But there's this sense, I think you mentioned it when you were talking about that you went into business and you were trying to model the feminine receiving and like yes, the woman on the beach getting notifications that she's getting paid for what? We don't know. And this kind of this sway, there's a big cultural shift right now, at least that I'm seeing, of women remembering and waking up to this, oh, we've lost this connection to the divine feminine. And anything when we have too much of it isn't helpful. So we do need the masculine structure, but we've been so heavily focused on only the masculine structure. I feel like there could be a bit of a pendulum swing where we go too far in the other direction. And that's maybe culturally, but individually as well. I don't know if you want to just speak to that a little bit. I don't have a specific question there for you, but
Yeah, yes, so much. So, coming from the Tantra world and having learned about polarity, we hear that a lot in Tantra. What does it mean to be feminine, or what is feminine energy, and what is masculine energy? And to be honest, I got a certain set of conditioning about what it means to be a woman as growing up. And when I went into that world, I got a whole different other set of conditioning, because when we think about a lot of time online or when we Google feminine energies, like this soft and flowy emotion, right? And all of that can be true. And at the same time, I found it quite disempowering because I really
Mhm.
believe that, well, feminine essence, first of all, is very difficult to define. Second of all, it is true that men and women, if we talk binary, we are different. We need different things. It is scientifically proven we need very different approaches to nervous system regulation, to our hormonal cycles. Women have monthly cycles, men have daily cycles, and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I really believe that some of those spaces in the new age spirituality portrays femininity as frail and fragile. And I really do not see that to be true. I really believe that women, we are extremely resilient, we are extremely
Mm-hmm.
intelligent, we're extremely focused when we want to be. And that's the complete opposite, right? They tell us the masculine is the container and shifts the focus. I don't find that to be true. But at the same time, as women, we are deeply in tune with nature. We are deeply in tune with, I would say, the energy of water and the emotional side. It doesn't mean that those two things cannot coexist. For me, they are really hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel within me that there is definitely a difference, and I want to be approached differently. And I do want to be taken care of and
Mm-hmm.
protected by my partner or whatever. If
Mm-hmm.
I want to receive from people. I want to connect deeply with people, which I find it to be a little bit more of a feminine quality, at least the way I feel it. But the way femininity is portrayed in those new age spaces, I find it very disempowering. And I believe that plays a huge role even in entrepreneurship, because when we talk about feminine business, it's almost like you're not allowed to work hard because then you're not in your feminine. To me,
Mm-hmm.
that is very
Mm-hmm.
disempowering, because that is exactly that way, the way to keep women broke, to keep women quiet. Doesn't it look a little bit the same to you, the old fashioned Christian patriarchal way of talking about gender roles, where the woman should be family focused, she should be stay at home mom, whatever. If that's the choice of a woman,
Mm-hmm.
I deeply respect that. But then we come from the new age space where they tell us kind of the same thing. You shouldn't be too obsessed with your mission because that's not feminine. You shouldn't be too ambitious because that's
Mm.
not really, you're not really in your receiving. You shouldn't work too hard because you should actually lay back and wait for money to come in. That is a way to keep us broke. That's just another patriarchal, mm, to me, dogma wrapped just in a prettier package.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point. It's so interesting to think about. And I think that's where we get, we have the toxic masculine. There's a toxic feminine
Yeah.
too. This misinterpretation that, you know, receptivity, which is one of those feminine qualities, it gets mixed up with
Yeah.
passivity, right? Just passively, you become a doormat. You become a like, oh, woe is me if it's not working or if people aren't coming to me. But receptivity is anything but passive, right? It takes a lot of work to be open and to be receptive and to be able to have the capacity and the space within us to
Mm.
receive, just as one kind of point. But yeah, I love the way that you're framing that as this replica of the way that the patriarchy has kept us small. And again, it comes back to so many competing messages that we get, right? You have to be tough to make it in a man's world. It's like, well, can't we have not a man's world? But then when you are tough and try to make it in a man's world, you get labeled with all of these, derogatory terms. When we try to toe the line or to live up or work in those spaces that are so patriarchal, and it's just, yeah, there is another way, and I think that we're rediscovering it slowly. And all of us doing this kind of work are just playing with what that means and what that looks like. I don't know that I found anyone who has the
Yeah.
answer, but practicing that kind of feeling into yourself and into your own body again, it just comes right back to hear what feels true for you. Can you hear your intuition? I don't know why it's calling to be shared, but the balance between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine is really beautifully illustrated in Celtic mythology, where in order to rule the land, the king had to first wed the sovereignty goddess.
Mm.
So where there was this ritual of he had to pass the test. Was he a good enough king? Was he wise? Was he kind? Was he able to care for the land? If so, he was wedded to the land, and that was a sacred union. And it was that wedding of the divine feminine and the masculine in balance and harmony, not one over the other, both needing each other. And again, this isn't a man woman thing because we all carry
Yes.
both within us. But as a society, that I think is what we need to work towards rediscovering, is having both and having them work in harmony and unison.
Mm, yeah. I love what's coming through for
Mhm.
me is in the way that feminine energy feels true to me is that feminine energy is really the voice of truth. And whether that is being so deeply connected with yourself and speaking the truth and what you see in others without judgment. And it is hard to keep our human filters out, right? But sometimes
Mhm.
mirroring what we see in front of us without demanding something different or without judging the person, the situation in front of us, but just voicing and asking, what do we actually need? What does the land need? What does the
Mhm.
situation need? What does even like I find that I am very connected with my animals, something that my partner is not, right? So I already know what they need because I'm so deeply connected with myself. And from that space, I can connect with everything around me, really. And I can be the voice of truth in whatever situation is happening at that moment. And I think that's also
Mhm.
where feminine energy has been deeply, yeah, criticized, and we are cut out from our voices and from the voice of truth.
Yeah.
And I think there's many aspects to femininity, but I feel like this one is the one that's most present in my life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a powerful one that feels like a really beautiful way to kind of segue back into the work that you do with women, because finding our voices and tapping into that intuition and being able to speak our truths and speak what we see, I think that's a really big piece of success without the forcing in business for women. And even though it feels like we've kind of gone off track in terms of our topic, I think it's all so related to the work that you do. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about what that work looks like, what it is that you support women with, and how they can tap in and work with you.
Yeah, thank you for circling back to that. So I think that one of the core things that I do with women is picture your wildest dreams in business. And when you do that, really connect to the five senses reality of that. What does it look like? What do you hear around you? What do you see around you? What are you doing in that moment where you feel like you're there where you want to be in your business? And then notice, is there something that stops you from achieving that, from being in that place? Is there something that's stopping you from taking action to be there? That's what we work on, because those little
Mm.
nagging feelings, those imprints, is there are 2 points in our business, I believe. When we start, when our brain is telling us you're never going to get there because you're not there right now, so it's very hard to project in the future and to keep doing the work
Mhm.
when there's no proof of what's going to work or what's not going to work. So
Mhm.
in that moment, what my business mentor calls it, the boulder pushing years. It's the resilience. It's like almost going to the gym when you want to run a marathon, and training for that marathon
Right.
is our nervous system is what's going to actually keep us in the game to get through that period of time. And there is a second moment in our business where actually our dreams are coming true, but we find ourselves reaching the glass ceiling of what our nervous system and our belief system is, what we believe that we're capable of holding, along
Mm.
with the hyper independence of not outsourcing and all of the ways that we need support but we are not not asking, all of the ways that we over identify with our businesses, all of the ways that we are addicted to productivity to hide from emotions and so on, right? So
Mhm.
there's these two moments in
Mhm.
our business that I believe that no amount of strategy will support you to actually surpass those moments so that you can experience not only the money, not only the impact, because you want to be on that stage to speak to hundreds and thousands of women. First of all, your nervous system needs to allow for you to do that. And second, when you go home, you also want to have that yummy feeling that you are carrying your mission into the world, and you want to go to your partner and have a heartfelt conversation, or you want to go and
Mm.
share, I don't know, wine or tea with friends. It's both. It's your business, but it's also your life. And I feel
Yeah.
like women are getting better at making money, but not at enjoying their money. So I want both sides for them.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, I love that, and that is so reflected in the name of your program, Rich and Rested. Oh, I love that. It feels so good. Um, do you wanna share a little bit about that program and how people can learn more?
Yes. So Rich and Rested is an intensive, I call it. It's a 3 session format where we get to really dive into some of the most common things that I see with entrepreneurs. I named a few of them, but a lot of us just feel like either we are in the beginning, we are feeling like I know what I need to do, but there's something stopping me from actually being seen, reaching out, doing all the
Right.
things that I know I need to be doing to move forward in my business.
Mm.
Or, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
I am already making enough money, but I feel like I'm sort of crumbling from the inside. And I want to not only make money, but also enjoy life. So we get into the
Mhm.
limiting beliefs that are coming up. We get into the nervous system blocks because I've been doing talk therapy and on the other hand spirituality and all of the things, and they all played a beautiful role in my life, but it was not until I really learned to work with my nervous system that I could surpass those thresholds and move into more
Yeah.
expansion. So that is what we do inside the Rich and Rested Intensive. You receive my co-regulation with you because co-regulation is a big part of it. You receive the journey of getting through those core wounds, through those core beliefs, so that you can actually
Mhm.
go and do the thing that you need to do so that your business can
Mhm.
thrive.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing more about that. It's interesting too how many of the things you're speaking about, again, for those of you listening who maybe aren't in business, these things still apply, right? That like I know what I need to do to make my life feel better, but I just can't seem to do it. That's all relevant, whether or not it's a business move or a life move or whatever it is. So I love that this conversation is carries so much value, even for those listening who aren't entrepreneurs, though I think there's a fair chunk who are. And then, of course, we're going to drop in the show notes the ways to get a hold of Diana. The link to go check out the Rich and Rested Intensive will be there, as will be her social media handles and all of that jazz, so that you can go connect, follow along, reach out, send her a message. If this is feeling resonant for you, if it feels like something that would be supportive. Thank you so much for being here with me today and chatting with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, I want to say if people feel resonant, but I will never sell you anything. So reach out just so that we can connect and share your story with me. And I would love that. Thank you for
Mhm.
having me. Again, a really beautiful conversation.
Yes, I second that sentiment. And thank you for being here with us, Woo Crew. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with Diana. I hope you have found as much value in it as I have. And as always, if you liked this episode, please leave a rating, a review, like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and share with a friend. I'll be back here again, same time next week with a solo episode. Bye for now.